hell of an intro. I tell you what you info, but I never really been the type of dude to give no info.
Welcome to the Walk and Grill Show, everyone. It's Roney and Courtney on the mic, and we have a special guest with us today, Ibn Wallace. If you guys don't know who this is, he's a good friend of mine. He's been we met at, I want to say, just random networking event where we kicked it. Ever since then, he's been like somebody I always reference and talk to within the real estate industry. But we're not just going to talk about real estate, because I'm sure you guys hear enough about me and, when I talk about real estate, even though I barely kind of bring it up. But he has an interesting story that I think that everyone here needs to hear. He comes from a very different background, right? So I think just that in itself is going to be able to give everyone that experience, that perspective, as we always like to do, to be able to share with you what you can do if you're going through the same thing, or maybe you know somebody else, to be, to just essentially share it with them. But with all that being said, Evan, thank you for taking the time to join us here today. And Courtney, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. Please,
You're
go
good?
ahead.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
yes,
Thank
you're
you.
good. Yeah,
I appreciate you inviting me on here, man. I'm looking forward to it, sharing a little bit about my story and where I come from, a little bit about my background. Yeah.
Perfect. I see you got an interesting shirt that you got on right there. What it says?
Nobody cares, work
cares.
harder.
Where'd you get that from?
I think I ordered it offline, man.
Yeah.
These are some easy print shirts. But at the end of the day, when you sit down and you reflect over what you're going through, just remember this: nobody cares. Work harder, get up tomorrow, and start all over and hit the pavement running again, man. Nobody cares.
Is that how you really feel?
Most days. Most days. Most days. It don't matter what you go through throughout the day. It's tomorrow. There's always tomorrow.
I mean, there's not always tomorrow. I think you have to make the best out of today.
I mean, you. All right.
If there's anyone who's gonna pick something apart.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it's gonna be me and my. But no, I just like to get deeper and understand things for what your perspective it looks like, right? And that's why I kind of said, like, there's for the most part, for everyone that has the ability to wake up and see the next day, that's amazing. But I will always say, of course, I love the aspect nobody cares, work harder, but just live in the moment. If that means you got to work harder in the moment at the time being, then hey, do it, because that's one thing that's going to help you move to that next step. But Evan, I want to really go into who you are, so everyone can kind of understand a little bit more and know exactly who they're talking about or who they're listening to. So if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about your upbringing and kind of what's your life story look like?
Yeah. I grew up in Akron, Ohio. It was a small town where LeBron James is from. But my childhood, to be honest with you, it wasn't extravagant. I grew up with 7 other siblings, my mother, and had 8 kids. So I've got 6 brothers and 2 sisters, or 5 brothers and 2 sisters. So I was growing up in a busy, packed household. It was a small house, but we had to make do. 18 years old, I moved from Ohio to North Carolina and joined the Marine Corps. And that was a challenge, man. It was 19 years old. All I knew about was playing basketball and running after girls. And by the time I was 19 years old, I found myself in Iraq for the first time on my first deployment. So I had to grow up at an early age. Fast forward 17 years, it's a lot happened in between there. I actually did 5 years as a Marine and got out and joined the Army. I ended up being deployed on 3 tours to Iraq with the Marine Corps, and my final one was with the Army. So 4 tours total. I'm a combat veteran. And as you can see, I know this is being recorded, but this is a struggle being able to share my story. So that's why I was appreciative that you invited me here, because this is real rough, trying to put my story out there to the world.
Yeah. So let's unpack what you kind of just mentioned right there. You said you moved to North Carolina at 18. Did you move by yourself or did you move with family?
I did. I jumped on
You did
a
which one?
Greyhound. My brother, I have an older brother who was already in the Marine Corps, and I jumped on a Greyhound and said, "Hey man, showed up at his door. I need a place to stay." So well, you ain't gonna stay for free, you know. I started training immediately. We was up at 5 a.m. running every single day to get in shape,
Okay.
and yeah, it was a bold move, but there wasn't much
Yeah.
for me in Ohio. 17 years old. Like I said, there was a lot of us. So at 17 years old, I was on my own. My first little, what they call here, kind of like a duplex, where you share one side of a house there.
Hmm.
Uh, and I came home one day and everything was gone. So at 17 years old, you can imagine that I didn't have much anyway. But everything was gone. So I had nothing to do and couldn't go back home. So I just jumped on a Greyhound and I said, I'll figure it out. And
Oh wow,
I ended
that's
up in North
brave.
Carolina. Yeah, I ended up in North Carolina with my older brother. And like I said, we went to work. He taught me this right here. Nobody, he didn't say it to me, but nobody cares. Work harder. That's where I learned at an early age. Nobody
Gotcha.
cares. Get up and work harder.
So would you say like, because everyone here, even Courtney, she even moved. Courtney, did you move with? You didn't move with family. You moved and then family followed, essentially,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So everyone here essentially moved. And what gave you that leap of faith to just say, all right, I know you kind of just touched upon it real quick, but was there something outside of you not having anything in Akron, Ohio, to just say, you know what, I got to go do this?
No, I didn't have any kind of belief system either. So I didn't know where it was
Mm,
going to take me at. Um, I didn't have a faith in God then, and I was just going with the flow, right? I knew I could afford a bus
yeah.
ticket with the last little money I had. I needed a new start. I had family in a different state, and North Carolina is where I landed at.
With cracky lackey, as Marcus would say. But Courtney, you have any questions?
I mean, I was kind of wondering the same thing, but more so just the military route. I didn't know. I know once you
Yeah.
mentioned your older brother had already been a Marine. I didn't know if that was the reason that you chose that, or if that was an idea that you kind of already had, or like run it in the family or anything like that.
Right. No, he was the first of many. The Out of the 8 siblings, 4 of us were actually in the military. 3 Marines and 1 in the Army. And he was the first of a long line of us. Just, hey, the military is the best thing to do. Let's go and let's get up out of this place. Ohio is not where you want to become an adult. That's what I was saying.
Oh wow.
um, but yeah, he was the first, and um, you know, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. I had long hair when I came down, and they shaved it off. I wasn't ready for that either. Uh,
Yeah, well now you got it back.
yeah, yeah.
I should introduce you to George. He's been on the show before, and he's actually from Ohio too. I don't know where in Ohio, but he's now in North Carolina as well. Somebody you could connect with, and maybe you guys can bond off of being from Ohio on that aspect.
Right.
For
But
better or worse.
oh, stop, Courtney.
He said it, not me.
But let's go back to the military aspect, the military side of your career. You said 4 tours. Is that correct?
4 tours.
All of
Four
them were in.
tours.
All of them were. Are all of them were in Iraq?
Uh, I ended up in Iraq 4 times. My third
Mm,
deployment, actually, I did what they call a med float. So I was on the USS Kearsarge for 9 months at sea, and we spent about 30 days when we got into that region. About 30 days on my third deployment. So in Iraq, the second, and the last time with the Army. But my third one was actually a med float where we just got to get on land for a little bit.
mm.
But
Now, are
four
you
tours total. It
there?
was
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was saying four tours. The last one was the best. The first
Okay.
3 were as a Marine, and let's just say they deploy a little bit different. Uh, there was a little bit more structure there. The first three tours were early days of enduring freedom, after 9/11. So there was a lot more boots on ground by the time I deployed that fourth time. It was a lot. Made it worthwhile, that
Gotcha.
last deployment.
In the years that you were going, is there combat, or is it just you guys are just there to make sure everything is good?
There was combat. I will say that
Mm.
it was an easier road as when I deployed with the Army instead of the Marine Corps. The first three were rougher than the last, I'll say.
Mm-hmm. Courtney, any questions?
I'm just listening. I
Yeah.
don't have a lot of like military experience to ask those questions, and I know where my brain goes automatically. And I just appreciate that. I appreciate that you're sharing, and I appreciate that you've already expressed that it's difficult for you to share. So
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
I'm such in my like empathy mode that I'm just listening. I just want him to go in his own flow. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
It's and it's something. My last deployment was 2009, so it's been quite a while. But
Oh yeah.
there's just
Mhm.
some effects that it's still a little bit tough to share. I will be honest with you. And there's just certain things that I shouldn't share, about my
Mm-hmm.
combat experience. Um, Other than like I said, the first three were rougher than the last. The last one, I was able to relax a little bit more. I still saw combat. I was a what they call an 88 Mike, a truck driver. So we ran convoys back and forth to base. Um, I've been hit with an IED. I've seen friends that have been hit with IED. So it's a tougher. It was tough the last one, but it was a lot tougher the first three. I'll just say.
Mhm.
And
I
go
was
ahead.
just gonna ask what made you make the switch from Marines to Army. If you had that knowledge ahead of time, or if you were just like, I'm getting it, I need something different.
Right. Good question. Thank you for asking. I did 3 tours in my first 5 years as a Marine, and I just thought every time I came back, man, I love boots here in America so much more, and I'm not going to finish my career deploying every other year. I said I'm not going to. I wanted to stay, but I just couldn't be out of the country every other year away from my family.
Mhm.
And so uh, when I joined the Army, I joined the National Guard. And I thought it would be, the one weekend a month. Uh, the one weekend a month you come in, you wear a uniform. But I ended up serving on active duty Army, what they call on order. So I was full-time Army working in the National Guard. And yeah.
So kind of what we thought the expectation was, or what we thought it was gonna look like,
Yeah,
versus what
yeah.
it actually did look
But
like.
it was one of the things I couldn't go get a job. I knew what I knew. I loved working with weapons.
Mhm.
I loved my camaraderie that I had with everyone that I was pretty much raised with. I was in the military at 19 years old, so all my adult years
Yeah.
were in uniform, and
Mhm.
it's hard to leave that. You ask any veteran out here, they'll tell you that they're happy that they're out, but they miss certain aspects of it every single day. There's just nothing like it. More than any
Mhm.
fraternity, or it's real.
Mhm.
If you were 18 again, if you had that ability to go back in time, would you do it all over again?
I would, I would,
Mm.
because like I said, I grew up at an early age. I was taught stuff that I cherish now today. It's about standing on business is what they call it these days. The youngest ones
Stand
would
on
say
business.
standing on business. Taught me how to stand
Oh
on
man.
business at an early age, man. And I'm appreciative of that because I'm raising a family now and I can teach them that the things that they see out here, these other kids out here, There's a better way. At the end of the day,
Mm.
you got to get up, and nobody cares. Work harder every single day. You get that opportunity.
Yeah. So let's talk about the things that you learned from it. What are some of the big takeaways that you have taken from just being in the military, whether it's the Marines or Army, and being able to use it on the day to day for yourself, and even to be able to implement it to how you raise your children?
If I was to be real specific, I would just say paying attention to detail. Every
Mm.
little detail matters. It's like what you said, going back to what you said earlier, being in the moment, paying attention to those moments. Details matter. Words matter. I will say that's the biggest thing. I've always paid attention to details, and that's why I can focus so much. I would say that's the biggest one.
I got a selfish question. So we're both in real estate. How do you use that practice in real estate?
Paying attention to detail.
Yeah.
Well, everybody builds a business different in real estate. My detail is paying attention to the clients. There's a lot of real estate
Mm.
agents out here that are I won't call them money hungry, but they need a commission check, and it comes off when they're sharing with their clients that they haven't been paid, that they need to be paid. So you got to pay attention to those details within your clients, um, because you'll know that it takes a long time to build a relationship, and
Yeah.
just paying attention to those details of what your clients are looking for, what they want out of life, not just in real estate.
Okay. Any follow-up, Courtney?
Not yet. I think all of that makes sense. It's interesting. I I feel like some of the questions I'm like, I don't know how much he wants to share. I don't know how much he wants. This conversation in particular, more than others, I'm kind of like, that question, I don't
Well, I
know.
think
But
Evan's nice
more,
enough to let us know if he's like,
Yeah.
no.
yeah.
That's not it. That's not the one today. Or if you have
Mhm.
enough PR training, right? You can find your way around it.
Well, not specifics of your experience, but kind of just more of moving forward and what you've experienced since then, and what it's looked like and how it
And I might sound
feels.
like I'm
And
all over the place because, man, when I really reflect on it, I've been through a lot, and it would
Mhm,
it's I wouldn't be able to share all of it in with you within an hour. Um,
mhm.
but I've been through a lot, and like I said, I grew up at an early age. I just turned 41 years old, and I still tell people that I'm 25 sometimes if I get a fresh haircut. But yeah, I've done so much. So please just ask away. This is an opportunity for me. You don't see it, but I'm sweating over here. This is nice. This is nice. This is nice.
So I know, Courtney, while you kind of, I'll go
Okay.
chime up your next question if you want, but this is actually Evan's first time, and a lot of people we have on, it's their first time. So
Mhm.
I don't know how many people actually say like they're nervous, but I will say, Evan, you're taking the step in the right direction, right? By just
Mhm.
Yeah.
saying, all right, hey, it's my first time doing something. Most people are like, oh, it's my first time. I'm
Mhm.
scared. I'm nervous. I actually don't even want to do it, and I just want to give you your flowers here because you're here, you're doing it. And
Mhm.
even when I first brought the conversation, I was like, hey, as an opportunity, do you want to? You were like, yeah, let's do it. As long as it's not real estate, right? So, we're gonna keep it away from real estate as much as possible. But I just want to commend you for even taking that and having that courage. And I think everybody can use this as an example. Is even when you're not comfortable doing something, you got to still find a way to do it, because otherwise, nobody cares. Work harder.
Yeah.
That's gonna
Nobody
be the mantra
cares.
from now on, man. That's gonna be the mantra.
I
Not our mantra.
I will share. You
Mine.
mentioned earlier about my injury. So in martial arts, I take Taekwondo. Me and my
Mm.
twin daughters have been training for about 3.5 years now. And December, the middle of December, we achieved our black belt in Taekwondo, and we've been competing pretty regularly, and it's been really a fun experience that we can do together with as a family. and they've taken first and second place numerous times. Traveled down to Georgia for a couple of tournaments down there, and last year around March, um, I
Give
broke
him the
my jaw.
storyline, man.
Yeah.
No. You're gonna give him the storyline to this one. You
Yeah.
just don't say that. You
You know,
give him the storyline.
I was training for so long. I was training for about 6 months. The one prior, my first tournament was September of 2002, I believe, and I could barely get my foot halfway off the ground, but it was fun. I got to step into a ring with somebody I didn't know from another region, and I took home second place. And I wasn't training as hard, but after that fight, I said, you know what, that was too easy. I accomplished something, you know, and I'm going to start training for real. So for 6 months, I was in the gym really hard to get back to Georgia for this tournament. It was going to be somebody different fighting, obviously, but I was ready this time. And the guy across from me wanted to take me out in front of my family. So I stepped into the ring with him. And at this time, I wasn't a black belt, so there are no head kicks for color belts, only if you're a black belt. And I step into the ring with this guy, and the first kick he does is a head kick. And I saw it coming because we had watched him fight the match before mine, previous, and he wanted the back kick. The back kick is worth 4 points. And we saw that he tried the back kick about 4 or 5 times in the match previous. So we said, he wants the back kick. Watch out for the back kick. Watch out for the back kick. So we knew the back kick was coming. I turned into it because I saw the back kick coming. And he went high and broke my jaw right on the middle here. And way back here, it's a mandibular fracture. Broke it in 3 places. Needed maxillofacial surgery to put it all together. Wearing a couple plates there. But that gave me some PTSD. It was hard. I spent 2.5 months on a liquid diet, so I lost about 25 pounds. And I couldn't wait to get back into the gym.
See, now that's the part I don't understand. That's where I get lost. After something like that, kick. I'm like, you know what?
It was a good kick.
It was a really
good kick. Now that's where we can relate. This is where I can start to relate.
It was a really good kick.
Yeah, anyone I know with like rugby injuries or like concussions, like we're all just like at practice, like I got like 2 more weeks.
I had trained like, so hard to get in this fight, and it was over within 3 seconds. He knocked me down. I got right back up, but I was a little bit out of it, and because of the blood, they wouldn't let me finish. It was over with. But I had some time to reflect on it. You know, months later. Like I said, I spent 2.5 months on just a liquid diet. My main go-to meal was macaroni and cheese that was pureed in a blender, or some chicken noodle soup, and I was just slurping it down for months. And it was, oh man, it was hard for me to go to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I would see this kick coming. I would see it coming. And knowing that I turned into it, right? So I gave it to him. I put it right there on the platter. And it took me months to realize, like, well, wait a minute. He knew better. He tried to take me out in front of my family. And everybody thought I was crazy, but after 2.5 months, I was right back in the gym. I wasn't doing much. I wasn't sparring. I was just more trying to get my my stamina back. People thought I was crazy. I couldn't explain it to any of the other parents without them going, man, what are you doing? But I got right back in there, and I competed 6 months later, and I took home first place.
Nice.
And
congrats.
I appreciate it. So I'm still not healed a little bit. I mean, it's still numb a little bit. It's been about a year now, almost a year. It was last March. Um, but it's something that I had to overcome. And I tell you what, it's better that I did. I get to go in the gym every day. I get to see these kids. They get to see that I keep showing up,
Yeah.
and it's worth it, man. It's worth it.
Is it the competition that keeps you going back to it, or is it just like what is it that said that gave you the ability to say, yeah, I'm gonna go back into the ring?
Because I could have made all the excuses that I wanted to make, but at the end of the day, nobody cares, man. Work harder,
That's gonna be the name of
right?
this episode.
Nobody cares. Work harder, and I keep going back, and I don't want to. Like I said, I started doing this because of the kids, right? It was, hey, you need to exercise. Let's get in here and see if you like it, and they liked it,
Yeah.
and more, I liked it, right? I get to stay young. I get to stay mobile. I can do kicks that nobody would ever see coming. It's fun.
I was just gonna ask, you mentioned kind of your brain being stuck on that moment, on that memory. And I know how interesting our brains can be in terms of holding on to an image and different things like that. When you trained and when you had a new result the next time, or when you kind of were able to overcome that physically, did you notice the mental change as well? Did you notice the memory changed or wasn't as disturbing or things like that? Or did you still have that? Like, when did that memory pass or has it passed?
It hasn't, but I can focus my energy in a different place now. Uh, prior, I am, and I was a veteran, so I went through the VA to learn about post-traumatic stress and the things to do to overcome post-traumatic stress. So when it happened, it didn't linger because I knew how to deal with it, if that makes sense.
Mm.
I think if had I not had that experience through the military that put me in the place to have the right kind of care at the VA, that it would have been different. At 40 years old, you're getting your jaw broke in front of your wife and kids.
Yeah.
It would have been tough to overcome, but I think because because of the path that I had already walked, it was easier to overcome.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Was there any like? Cause I'm just trying to understand. Like, was there any not one thing, but was there anything that really helped you? I guess even with maybe the training that you took away from it that helped you, or is it just time? I guess.
Yeah, and as I got older, just as I'm getting older, I appreciate things more. And there's some things that are minor that a lot of people will make to be big issues. Um, but I pay attention to detail, man. Like I said, I do like to live in the moment.
Yeah. Do you ever catch yourself in that fight or flight moment though?
All the time it's broken what they tell me. It's
Mm.
uh sometimes I can't control the anxiety that I'm having inside of my body, no matter how comfortable I feel in the situation.
Yep.
That was the best way that they described it to me, is that the fight or flight switch, when that big
Mhm.
Rottweiler get loose out of the yard and pin you in that corner and you standing there and you don't know what to do and he just barking at you. He ain't touching you yet. He just barking at you and you don't know which way to go. I get that feeling. I don't know if that resonated with you just now, but if you felt that, just being in the corner there, what to do. I have that feeling and it's uncontrollable and I can't pick or choose which moments that I have them in.
Yeah. The trauma response.
The
Always
trauma
talking about the
response,
trauma
correct, right.
response. Yeah. Well, and what's interesting about that, and a lot of people may not know, just to kind of add a little bit of background to the trauma response, more recently they actually added it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which I think we spoke about with Reggie a little bit. Some of the topics are kind of coming back around. For example, when you're talking about like a specific memory that was traumatic for you, in my head I'm like EMDR would be perfect. But so certain topics are coming up. But anyway, back
Can you touch
to
upon EMDR though?
what EMDR is, or why I say that, why it would be
Yeah.
effective. So, I mean, yeah, we mentioned it before. It's just a bilateral stimulation that's used, which is just bilateral meaning both sides, stimulation meaning something happening on both sides of your body. And what that does is stimulate your brain on a deeper level than just talking. So you use bilateral stimulation while you process. So we would literally hold on to, I want you to see this image. And because you already have that image and it's so ingrained in your brain, it's going to be very easy for you to have that image. But we're going to use, I'm going really deep into EMDR now. We're going to use what's called a negative cognition, and then we're also going to use a positive cognition. So in this example, I'm just making things up for the, for the storyline, but your negative cognition might be, I'm not good enough, or I have no accomplishments, or something really deep about yourself because of that memory. And then the positive cognition might be, like, I'm proud of who I am, or I'm proud of what I've accomplished, or something along those lines. And we move through the memory doing the bilateral stimulation to get you to a point where you're more able to see that. You still have the memory, but it's a lot less distressing, and it has that positive cognition tied to it more than the negative feeling that you started with. It's incredible. I actually just did it yesterday with a client. It took 20 minutes, and the memory that she had just completely flipped. It was incredible to watch.
Wow.
It's insane to watch, because and that's really what the whole point of EMDR is. When you hear people talk about it, it's like we could get 30 minutes of therapy done, and it could have took 3 years of just talk therapy. It's so interesting. It depends on the person, it depends on the work, it depends, it's not appropriate for everybody. But when it works, it works. So it's really interesting. And I'm not selling EMDR, I'm just saying there's certain things as a clinician, it's like, oh, this would be perfect for EMDR. Ooh, this would be perfect for EMDR. And that's one of those things. But anyway, back to the trauma response. Yeah, the
Thank
fight,
you for
flight,
sharing
freeze,
that.
or fawn. Yeah. And so those are the responses that people have when they're experiencing a trigger or some stimuli that triggers their trauma. We do not have any control over that. Our brains do that on their own. And it goes back, Reggie did actually mention the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system within our brains. So, and just to explain, because I think a lot of people haven't heard that. So of course we understand like fight or flight, like you're either running from it or you're trying to fight it off. Freeze is literally just freezing. Like you're not able to, a lot of times you're not able to think through the situation because of the fear or because of the just trauma response that you're having. So you freeze. And fawn is where you actually kind of try to give to the situation. So, for example, in this Rottweiler situation, is there somehow food next to you, or somehow like something that you can be like, here, it's okay. Do you need pets? Like somehow try to give to. In my head, I'm like, oh, it's like just a cute pit bull. Like it'll be
Yeah, okay.
But but no, that's a difficult situation. But in other situations where fawning would kind of just be like to give, or like act like you're like whatever I can do, like that's fine, and it's really just a protection method. It's just a survival method. But one thing that I really wanted to bring up, the main thing that I wanted to bring up, even though I've been talking the whole time, is that when people stay in a place of trauma, or when people stay in a place of anxiety, so on and so forth, if you're in the military for that long, it's very likely that that's just where you live. And that's how we say it. You live there in this heightened state of anxiety, heightened state of panic, heightened state of whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be military. Some people in the military may not feel that way. And some
Right.
people who are not in the military feel that way because of their upbringing. Again, my background's in domestic violence. So a lot of people who are in domestic violence relationships just live in that space because they know they're never safe in their house. And the
Right.
people who kind of stay in that space, so say you're in one of these situations for 10 years and you're just used to being there, it's going to take so much time for your body and your brain to understand, no, I am safe now. I'm home now. This is okay. Like when someone drops a fork, that's where that response is, and that's where a lot of people have make the connection to military as like loud noises or different things like that, where that can trigger. Again, I don't have military experience, so I'm not going to use words that I don't understand. But so different things like that. So, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. That's not my.
No,
I don't
I
want to
was
act
I
like I
was
have
going
the
to say
words
what
to
you're saying
explain.
has been heard hundreds of times, with me and my
Yeah,
colleagues. What you're saying is you are right up the alley with that. I've heard it,
yeah,
you know, what are the possibilities that you're actually in a gunfight right now, or the
hmm
possibility of you being in front of that dog right now? Some people will fabricate those thoughts, those fears into their head themselves, and there's
hmm
no danger there. And so being cognitive of
hmm
that and recognizing that there's really no danger is
hmm
supportive and help you get through that situation. Yeah.
yeah,
I've heard what you said hundreds of times for sure.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's all it really comes down to is like I think a lot of people the struggle that I see with clients, and whether it was with my domestic violence work or with the teens now, is why am I like this? Why do I do this? Why can't I just like I'm clearly not there anymore, so why do I feel that way? And it's just like your body used this as a protection method for so long. You don't just get to turn that off. Like it's been protecting you for so long. It's not just going to be like, oh, we're good now, I don't need to protect you anymore. It needs to learn, it needs to have proof that like we're actually safe, nothing is going to hurt us in this environment, and
Right.
then it can kind of start to slow down. So I think that's what I like to share, is just because anything that I think makes people feel like they're crazy or makes people feel like they're doing something wrong, I always like to validate and be like, no, our brains are protecting us, our body's protecting us the best way it knows how. And unfortunately sometimes it overdoes it. And you're right, it takes like
Mm.
so much just self communication and self like understanding of like we're not there anymore. It's going
Right.
to be okay. We're not there anymore. That person's not here. Different things like that, and just continued care for yourself, to get out of that space, and so that you don't live there anymore.
Yes.
But
I love it.
yeah, it's not to reiterate to you. It's more so for listeners to get an understanding of kind of where you may have been at, and why
Yes, I
that
love it.
has
I
been
love it.
there. And I think a lot of people have the experience of like, yeah, this one thing happened to me, and it may or may not have been super traumatic. It's funny, the image that I thought of when you mentioned how you couldn't get that kick out of your brain, and um there was like a mistake I made in a game. So a mistake I made playing rugby, it we didn't lose the game, they didn't score off of it. Like it wasn't that big of a deal. But for some reason it was this one. I've played rugby for 6 years, but I made this one mistake that I saw in my head repeatedly, and I couldn't sleep at night. Like I don't know what it was that my brain just clung onto that memory. So the reason I say that is I think a lot of people have one thing in their life that really does bother them. It doesn't have to be a mistake, it doesn't have to be an injury, it just kind of depends. And, and I'm not saying everybody needs EMDR, but I just think it's something that people can relate to be like, okay, yeah, like there have been things that get stuck in my head and I'm not quite sure why. And there is the ability to process them. There is the ability to work through it, and it's normal. Our brains are
I love
funky
it.
sometimes.
I love it. Yes. That is so true.
Yeah. That's my favorite part of that conversation. I love talking about the brain. But yeah,
So,
thank you for sharing that. It's super interesting.
so Eben, I got a question for you. You went from from Ohio, went to the military, did your time. You're out now. You're in real estate. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you made a good transition from military life to civilization, essentially, right? Would you say that that was a smooth transition for you?
It was. I retired in 2019, and I can remember
Oh, wow.
going to get a really really good job as a front end loader for trash pickup. And so I was by myself in the truck all day, for 14 hours. And I said, you know what? I can't do this. I couldn't do it. And I started Ubering. I had to figure out a way where I couldn't work for someone else. I had to do it by myself. And when I left my job and retired, I retired early on medical retirement. And some of those guys said, I just can't believe that you will give all of this up, to go out there and do it by yourself. And they were stuck on that job mindset. I said, I can't do this by myself. So I started Ubering, trying to figure out ways to make some money. And I went and got my real estate license. And that's what I started doing. I was Ubering and passing out business cards as I was giving rides to people. I'm just trying to build up clientele and meet new people and make different relationships. So it was not, and it was, I wouldn't say it was a hard transition, but I knew that I couldn't go work for someone else. I had to figure it out. What drew me to real estate was I'm a veteran. I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out why there were so many homeless veterans. Everywhere you drive, you can't drive anywhere in the city and not see a sign, homeless veteran. And I just didn't know why. There was no programs for them, or what don't they know? There's programs out there that they just have no idea that exist. And I was interested in learning how I could help. I have one of my siblings who went through a rough time and ended up homeless. And I couldn't understand why. Why is there you served? Why is no one helping you? And that's what drew me to real estate. Real estate is where I landed at, and it's been great. I've been a real estate agent for 5 years. And every day is a learning experience. You get to learn something new about this industry. But yeah, I don't believe, to go back to your question, I don't believe it was a hard transition. I just knew that I had to do it myself. I couldn't go punch somebody else's clock and them tell me when I can take a lunch break or how much time I got to spend with my children or my wife. Just couldn't happen for me.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good that you were able to, it sounded like you were able to make it work for you. So is there anything in particular that stood out that maybe you could share with others that maybe going through the same experiences, thoughts, experiences, ideas of something of that nature that you could really share to others who may be going through what you're going through right now?
If I wanted to keep it short, I would say nobody cares work harder, but the longer version would be everyone's different. You gotta figure out what motivates you and be intentional about your morning when you wake up. Be intentional. Most people don't see a path without being intentional in the morning. If you wake up and you want to get up, and I don't want to get into details because everybody's different. Everybody have a different morning routine. My morning routine is,
come on, call them out.
I need to get up in the morning and I'll spend 30 minutes doing yoga. I like to get up and I stretch in the morning, drink a cup of water, and be intentional about what I read in the morning, what my kids listen to in the morning. I would just leave it there. It's just be intentional in the morning. Get up and be intentional.
Yeah, I could actually say too, this is credit to you, but there was one conversation you and I had, and you were talking about how you stretch every day. Yeah, actually, that's something I've been doing more and more. I've been stretching just regularly, just to kind of get my body where it needs to be, like a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more durability. So when I go through, I guess a rough time or doing something that my body isn't used to, it's not like a wake up call from my body. It's more like, we got to use this muscle now. Let's go. So now I definitely want to give credit to where credit is due, and thank you for just sharing that, right? Because it was nothing that you even really said. You're just like, yeah, I stretch every day, and I was like, you stretch every day? Like, why do you do that? But it made sense. You just never really, you want to be prepared for that moment that you just don't know what it's going to be. So thank you for sharing that, because again, in ways that you probably didn't even know, it definitely impacted.
Yeah. Yeah, be intentional about your mornings and be accountable. If you say you're gonna be somewhere and do something, then do it. That's what I say. I live those. When I get up in the morning, I'm intentional and I'm accountable.
Yeah.
Gotta be loud.
No, you're good. Okay. Do you have any last questions, Courtney?
I do have a couple thoughts. So my thought is, or my question is very similar to the last thing that you asked. So not so much about like tools that you used or tips that you have specifically, and I'm talking about transitioning back home, back into work, different things like that. One conversation that I've had a lot is, and you kind of mentioned it, is like supporting vets, supporting military. And it's interesting because there's like part of the country or a culture around like veterans and military and like we support this and support that, but then I feel like there's another side, and this is generalizing, I'm aware that I'm generalizing. There's like another side that doesn't always cross over, where it's more like mental health and like, yeah, let's provide mental health resources, and like kind of pushes the mental health agenda, and sometimes they don't crisscross. So it's like, no, if we want to support, like we're happy to support. We're not like, oh, military, like in the same way that they present it, but we're like, yeah, mental health, here's like, and like you said, housing resources and different things like that. So my question is more of like, how do, just generally speaking, like can people support, or is it that more resources need to be louder, or there needs to be more understanding of what resources are available, or is it that more resources need to be available? Is there things that any just individual person can do? Does that make sense? I know it's a lot.
That's a really good question. I appreciate that. And yes, personally, we can do more. And like I said, we're going to stick with the veterans. The veterans aim at this, but PTSD is wide, and mental health issues are rampant other than people that's in the military.
Mhm.
But sometimes, most times, the individual knows that they are having a mental episode. And if we want to start talking about helping with mental health, then people with mental health need to share their thoughts and what they're going through, because we don't hear anything about correcting mental health problems until it's too late and something's happened. And now, oh, he was mentally ill or she was mentally ill.
Mhm.
We need to do a better job with individuals just sharing with people in general. We become a society that needs this electronic in our face, and we don't become social. We're on social media, but we're not social in real life. And I think that if we were able to share the thoughts that we're having, the problems that we're going through, without being ridiculed for them,
Mhm.
I think that's a good starting point. We can do all day. We can say all day about supporting the troops and supporting mental health, but most of the time it's too late. Those mental health issues are deep down, and we don't like to share them, myself included. I struggled with mental health for a long time before I knew that I needed to talk to somebody else about it. And so, just going back to your question, yes, there's so much we can do, but we haven't even scratched the surface about everyone goes through mental health issues.
Yeah.
Everyone. Where do we start at? We start by talking to each other.
So you know what that means, right? For everybody listening, shoot us a DM, email, let us know that you want to be a guest, and let's talk. This is what we do here. Hello. Does it ring a bell now? But no, seriously,
Yeah,
no.
being
On a serious note,
vulnerable.
just get on here and share.
Mhm.
You're not going to be judged here. It's a chill place, right? As I mentioned to Evan even before recording, like, hey, you can prepare for this episode all you want, man. I kid you not, it's not going to go any way that we even imagine it to be, because
Yeah.
that's what we don't have a script here. We're kind of just allowing you to share. hey, we want to learn a little bit more. Maybe through you just speaking about it, maybe you pick up something and you can be like, oh, I didn't realize this. Or, you get a question and you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Maybe I should look at this a little bit more. And so that's the ultimate goal of everything. So if you're listening to this, especially at this point, and you just heard what Eben said, just share it. Whether it's with us or somebody, just share it.
Yeah. There's lots of resources out there and supports out there. One thing that I will kind of help out with friends and stuff is a lot of different places. I know I work in behavioral health, so it's a little bit different for me, but a lot of places will have support. Like we'll have EAP, employee assistance programs. If you can't afford therapy or if you're having difficulty understanding where to find therapy, just look into it. It doesn't have to be therapy, but just someone who can listen to you non-judgmentally, and from an unbiased perspective. But yeah, don't be afraid to reach out.
I think it goes back to what Eben was mentioning. You have to take the initiative to do it. There's resources that are there. I'm sure we all know of them, but do you take the initiative to say, all right, I need to speak to someone and I'm going to go see that person, dial that number, reach out, email, whatever it is. Are you going to do that step? Eben is a prime example, right? I've spoke to him. Hey, let's jump on the podcast. And he said yes. He didn't have to show up today, but he did, right? So he took the initiative to take that next step forward. And definitely want to say I appreciate you again for just sticking to your word, like you mentioned, being accountable. So
hey, yeah, man.
Yeah. I have
man,
one
this
more.
was
No, sorry.
go ahead.
go ahead. Seriously.
He's gonna say exactly what I'm expecting him to say.
I was going to say I really appreciate being on here. It's another stepping stone for me, being able to. A lot of people say they like to talk about themselves, but not me. Kind of bottled up a little bit. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share on your platform, and thank you for inviting me for sure.
Of course.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad this could be a platform for you because it is important and you've accomplished a lot and it's really cool. So I'm glad you've been able to do that a little bit. But all I was gonna say was I'd be a little disappointed in myself if I didn't bring up that I do disagree that nobody cares. I'll always disagree that nobody cares. I agree with work harder, but I disagree that nobody cares. The whole point of this conversation, the end of this conversation, is finding support and looking for community and finding ways that other people in your life can help you to see the value in yourself and help you to heal and grow and all of those different things. So
Courtney, I'm
not disagreeing with the whole motto. You guys can keep your little motto. It's fine. This is a great shirt. That's fine. But I'll always, anytime I hear that nobody cares, it's not a big deal. I just in my head I'm like, I always care. I'll always care. So
how
I gotta
you
argue
say,
it.
how you say, I like to look at things a little bit deeper. Right, this is exactly what you're doing right now. You're looking at it too deep.
Okay, because I'm not gonna. No, I'm not. Okay, here's what always happens. After the episode, we'll go into it this way. After the episode, I'm like, I wanted to say this, but I just didn't. And Ronnie's like, well, no, if you have a disagreement, you have to disagree because it's going to start a good conversation. Or not that it has to start a long conversation, but I can't sit here as someone who cares. And we're talking about building connections. We're talking about seeking out people who can support you through difficult times. Those people care. Like, if you seek out support, and I know I'm speaking from a therapy perspective, but therapists care. We don't, I promise you, it's not a money thing, or anything like that. Like, I genuinely care about every story that I hear in my office or just any story I hear in general on this platform, for sure. So to me, it's more of,
and I understand that,
support,
but this is for your excuses.
Care.
Nobody cares about your excuses.
I know. The fine print, I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just had to make the comment that
I love it.
I agree with the work harder. I agree with the be intentional. I agree with everything else that we've said in terms of explaining it. But just a little reminder that I have to make at the end.
I love it.
People do care, but you can still work harder.
That's some good PR work. However, Eben, do you have socials that people can, follow you on or even reach out to you that you want them to know about or where they can tap in with you?
I'll share. I'm on Instagram, Eben, IBN _Wallace. And you can find me on LinkedIn under my name, first name, last name, Ibn Wallace, and Facebook.
So there you guys. Perfect. So there you guys have it. You guys know how to reach out to him if you guys want to have a deeper conversations, especially if you can relate to his story. Have that conversation with him, connect with him, and you know what? Chop it up. See if there's any way that maybe he can add some value to you. So until next time, keep on applying those perspectives, education, growth, and collaboration.